Use and just for fun, the entire industry is changing rapidly. Companies are working feverishly to develop the technology that makes them cheaper and more cost-effective, and investors are noticing. Let's go to our radio colleagues, Carol Massar and Corey Johnson.
Times in the world of drones. I want to thank you guys at Bloomberg TV as well. I'm joined right now by Mark Siegel from Menlo Ventures, a guy who's very much involved in the cutting edge of what's going on in the world of drones and investing in that world. Talk to me about what kind of deals you're seeing right now. What's the cutting edge in the world of drones?
Yeah, so right now we're seeing a lot of interesting software companies. There's some big hardware companies that are supplying the drones, DJI being the biggest, but companies doing interesting things for surveillance and photography, for collision avoidance, which is going to be obviously a core technology to make drones autonomous. Yeah. And then, interestingly, we've invested in a company that's doing delivery of, this could be for food, it could be for pharmaceuticals, emergency supplies. We have, and that company's called Flirty. And then we have a company called D-Drone, which is actually detecting drones. So you could think about this is the other side for anti-drone technology, because criminals are getting very creative, and they're using these to get onto Wi-Fi networks, to interfere with airplanes, and believe it or not, prisons are having a big problem with...
I've heard this, but tell me about the prison problem.
Yeah, so drones are being used to deliver drugs and weapons into prisons, and it's a huge problem. I'd say, you know, a typical prison has an incident, multiple incidents a week. And, of course, what they want to do, they want to see who picks it up. They want to try and figure out who flew the drone there and go arrest them. But this is it's a much bigger issue than I realized it was. But it turns out this is a problem now at every single prison. And, you know, airports probably have an incident once every week. So D-Drone is able to detect these drones, determine their trajectory, figure out where they're coming from. And then, obviously, depending on whether you're a prison or an airport or a stadium, how you deal with that threat might be different.
So, Mark, what kind of regulatory environment are you anticipating will ultimately be watching over kind of the drone environment? And what kind of, you know, you're investing in these companies, what kind of regulatory environment do you want to see that kind of keeps it safe and smart, but doesn't maybe stop business or impede the growth of drones?
Right. So the regulatory environment is going to be key here. And in fact, today what the FAA requires is that drones are operated within line of sight of the operator. And obviously that does impede the distance that you can use these, you know, legally for. But what's going to happen is that eventually that's going to go to an operator being able to pilot these looking at a camera that's on the drone. And, you know, ultimately what we hope and what we're planning on is that there are going to be autonomous flights once there's a safety record. So I think this is a you know, it's going to be a process. And what the FAA has really indicated is that they're willing to, you know, to work with these companies and be forward thinking about this, but there's going to have to be a lot of flight hours accumulated to prove that the safety of these, you know, of these drones is adequate to be flown over populated areas.
Is there an underlying technological advancement that's happened that's making this possible now? There's obviously interest here, and the imagination is certainly being applied, but I wonder if there's something that's happened technologically, whether it's through material science and composites or, I don't know, AI or something that's making this more possible now than ever before.
Well, there's obviously been an RC airplane and, you know, and helicopter market for a while. Right. The components of these drones have gotten very, very cheap, and the computational power to fly them. I honestly think that two of the other big factors are you can fly these now with your iPhone, and so now to be a hobbyist you don't need to invest hours and hours learning how to control these, and the high quality cameras you're able to have on these, and certainly imagery and surveillance is one of the initial applications for so I think that's part of what's created this big, you know, upturn. But then it's going to be all these software applications. So
I was going to say, a lot of your investments sound like they really are software focused, not in actually making drones, which sounds like they might be really commoditized in a lot.
Yeah. So at Menlo, you know, our feeling is that the hardware piece of this is probably going to become very commoditized. There will probably always be specialized, purpose-built drones. But
for drug smugglers, apparently.
Exactly. Yeah, and even for legal applications. But I think the services are really interesting. And so, for instance, anywhere where you have a human being that has to climb to an unsafe location, so or go somewhere remote. So think about utility pipeline inspections, cell towers, bridges. There's an interesting company here in San Francisco called Better View that does commercial roof inspections. And if you're the insurance
all those buildings
company,
in New York with scaffolding in front
Exactly.
Examine the fronts of those buildings.
Exactly. So I think that these kind of services where you're either replacing a helicopter or replacing people going into dangerous conditions, these are all going to be great applications for this.
Great stuff. Mark Siegel from Venlo Ventures. Really interesting stuff. It's got to be fun to hear all those pitches. I want to toss it back to you guys at Bloomberg TV. Thanks for that. We appreciate it.